Today, I'm going over the pros and cons of every drop spot to give you a better understanding of where you should land. Getting right into the first drop spot we have is Tilted Towers. And this drop has a ton of pros and cons. So let's start with the pros. Tilted Towers is incredibly good if you're someone who spends a lot of time perfecting their structure in the way you play. What I mean here is that Tilted is incredible if you make a loot path and you practice it so you can loot effectively, as well as a farming path where you can get your mats up quickly. Winning Tilted when playing against good players in high elo is all about knowledge of the drop spot. And in cash cups and opens tournaments, having that clear structure will give you an insane chance of winning most of your off-spawn fights. Another massive pro of Tilted is of course how close to the center of the map it is. So if you're someone who really isn't the best at rotating, then Tilted might be the play for you. Additionally, Tilted is surprisingly not super contested. Most of the time when you land Tilted, you'll be landing with just one other team. And at least in one of your cash cup games, you'll find yourself uncon in Tilted. On the other side, we have the cons of Tilted. Tilted is a very open drop spot from pretty much all angles, and a lot of people rotate through it. This means you need a high level of awareness and knowledge of when to rotate to not be caught off guard and get double sprayed by a duo rotating in. So if you're someone who knows your biggest weakness is awareness, then I wouldn't really recommend Tilted. On top of that, if you're someone who is bad at fighting off spawn with very few mats, then Tilted isn't for you either. A lot of the time when landing Tilted, a duo will just straight up 50-50 you, not giving you time to farm at all. So you really need to be able to hit your shots if you want to land here. The next drop spot is the Joneses. And in contrast to Tilted, this drop spot is great if you're someone who needs mats to fight off spawn. If you're a talented fighter, as long as you have mats, then this drop spot might very well be for you. The possibilities to get quick mats are endless at this drop. As well as that, this drop offers quick mats for the mid and end game. Wood, brick, metal, everything. You can also get lucky and get a car, which can speed up the process of rotating if you get a bad second zone. However, the Joneses is one of the most heavily contested drop spots in the entire game. So if you're looking for a drop spot that rarely is contested, you might want to keep on watching, because the Joneses is definitely not for you. A drop spot that might be for you, however, is Coney Crossroads. Coney is by far the most uncontested drop spot on the map, even more than Sanctuary that we will get to later. Coney is also a drop spot where you can get a ton of mats before having to fight anyone. But unfortunately, it only has 25 chests throughout the entire drop, which essentially means you need to fight off spawn the few times that you are contested if you want to make it work. There's no reason to scuff your entire game and split the drop. On the topic of uncontested drop spots, we of course also have the relatively newly added Shuffled Shrines. This drop is a tiny bit more contested than Coney from what I've seen, but it's probably the second most uncontested drop spot on the entire map. For some reason, people don't like landing new places and swapping drop spots. Shuffled Shrines has a few more chests than Coney, but it unfortunately is the drop with the least amount of floor spawns throughout the entire map. It also offers very little metal, which makes the drop quite difficult to play from. I only suggest landing here if you're looking for a drop spot that is heavily uncontested and you're someone who is really good at getting refreshes early in your games. Next up, we have Rave Cave. And Rave Cave is an interesting drop spot because it's very different from all the other POIs. In order to succeed in Rave Cave, you need a few things. A good drop map, because if you're conned on your side and have a worse glide than your opponent, you're simply just dead. And you of course also need a very good knowledge over the drop spot, as the players who knows the spot best usually wins. And it's actually quite a lot to learn here. And if you're a good sneaky player, then this drop spot is literally made for you. Rave Cave, more than any other spot, allows for sneaking around and getting free kills if you have the needed patience. Another massive pro with Rave Cave is that splitting the drop is completely fine. You and another duo can both be super good for the entire game by simply just splitting it, in contrast to other drop spots like Coney. This drop, of course, also have grapplers inside of it, the only POI to have this trait. Everything about Rave Cave is great, and if I was a high-level fighter, I would 100% go here. The only reason I don't go Rave Cave is because of how contested it is. It's a lot of chaos, you need a high level of awareness, as well as being able to consistently win fights against good players. Because, to no surprise, this drop spot, more than any other, have the most good players landing there. Okay, so since I just talked about the best drop spot on the map, let's now talk about what I consider the worst drop spot on the map. And that is Sanctuary. Let's start with what's good about Sanctuary. It's not contested by a lot of people, and certainly very few good teams, which means in like 95% of your games, you'll have an easy off-spawn fight if you do get conned. It has quite a lot of floor spawns, surprisingly, and you can pretty quickly get mats when fighting off spawn because of the big rocks and trees outside. On the other side, the metal is very, very bad, and there are very, very few chests and ammo boxes, which means you need a kill before endgame in most of your games. And in comparison to a spot like Coney, it just isn't worth it. Greasy is next up on the list, and Greasy is such an amazing drop spot, especially for solos. Greasy doesn't have the most amount of chests, but it does have grappler nearby that you can get most of your games, especially in solos. And it has a lot of quick mats, as well as shield mushrooms that gives you 15 shields and recharges every 20th second. Greasy also has amazing ammo and quite good floor spawns. It's overall a very good spot that gets contested, so to say, every game, but it's rarely more than 2 teams. And the fights tend to go very quickly. So getting a drop map is probably a good idea if you want to succeed from Greasy, because there will be times you'll get 50-50. Moving on, we have the underappreciated and underrated drop spot of Reality Falls. Reality Falls is a drop spot I would recommend for everyone who is struggling off spawn. Reality has a ton of mushrooms which can get you to 200 health in no time. And it's also super easy to split Reality Falls if you feel like that's necessary. The reason Reality is by far the best drop spot for people who struggle off spawn is because of, well, the mushrooms, and because of the fact that you can farm your mats super quickly. There are a few downsides to Reality I also have to mention. Much like with Rave Cave, you need a high level of awareness when going Reality, because there are so many spots people can hide and surprise you. If you know how to play very stealthy, this can of course be categorized as an advantage, but it's just something to keep in mind. Chonker Speedway is next on the list, and if you want to go Chonkers, you need a drop map. Chonkers is very much a 50-50 drop, meaning you'll most likely get landed on and someone with pickup macros will steal all of your weapons. And because of that reason alone, I recommend landing on floor spawns rather than the chests. Chonkers of course also has 18 coolers, pretty much guaranteeing you 6 splashes every game. One massive downside to Chonkers is that farming brick takes a very long time. And naturally, it is all the way on the south side of the map, which can be a blessing and a curse. The players that should go to Chonkers are players that have a perfected dropping, that are good at fighting, and lastly, someone that knows how to rotate at a high level. On the topic of spots far south, we of course also have the beautiful Synapse Station. Synapse is quite mildly conned and is honestly another underrated spot. Synapse has a ton of metal, rifts, 6 coolers, and grapplers right outside, but it is sometimes hard to rotate from Synapse, and using rifts of course comes with the risk of getting killed out of the air. Synapse is also one of those spots you can land and you can rotate using the water very, very easily. Get in a boat and start traveling all the way around to wherever the zone pulls. This will guarantee that you get on the dead side, and this is an incredibly viable strategy. Condo Canyon is a drop spot that a lot of people hate on. It doesn't seem to have a lot of good qualities, however, it actually isn't all that bad. Condo is a drop spot that requires you to study the spot, because the metal is nearly non-existent, and you don't want that in a drop. But if you do your homework, you can actually leave Condo with cap metal. Setting up a loot path and a farming path is something I would strongly recommend if you want to try Condo out. The beauty of Condo is that it's very often on con, very few good players lands here, and rotates are usually pretty straightforward. Rocky Reels is the next spot we're taking a look at, and Rocky is for players who are comfortable fighting without a lot of mats. The spot is nearly always contested, but the beauty of it is that fights go very quickly. Unfortunately though, farming mats does not go quickly. When the blimp was over Rocky, Rocky was honestly incredible. but ever since it got removed, it has gone down a notch. The great thing about Rocky, however, is that grapples are right outside. There are multiple coolers, and looting the place goes incredibly fast. Faster than any other POI I can think of. So the time you waste farming mats is saved by how quickly you can loot the spot. Logjam Junction is honestly the second worst spot out of all of the spots in this video. There's no metal. It's an okay amount of chests, but a terrible number of floor spawns. The only good thing about Logjam is that you can get grapplers, and it is quite often non-con as a result of how bad the spot in reality is. Lazy Lagoon, much like Logjam, doesn't offer a lot of metal. Lazy Lagoon, however, has an impressive amount of chests. Landing Lazy will get you stacked. You'll leave with good loot, so to say all of your games, and even though there isn't a ton of metal in Lazy, there's a house just outside of the spot that offers a ton of metal. I honestly believe that Lazy Lagoon is a pretty good landing spot for players who aren't the best of spawn, but they can win fights as long as they have some decent weapons. Sleepy Sounds is the second to last spot I'm gonna talk about in today's video. And this spot is great for players who are comfortable off spawn and understand that when you're playing a POI on the map's edge, you need to be a quick looter. Sleepy is unfortunately one of the more conned POIs, and for unexperienced players, this spot is incredibly hard to play in finals lobbies of cash cups and even high elo lobbies in the cash cup opens. Much like with Synapse, Sleepy also offers the opportunity to take a boat all around the water to get to the dead side of wherever the zone pulls, which is an absolute pro of this spot. This spot also has a ridiculous amount of ammo boxes and is great for players who are playing height and need to keep that constant pressure. And lastly, in this video, we have Shifty Shafts. Shifty is mildly contested. It has okay chests and actually a pretty good number of floor spawns, meaning you'll get out of Shifty with loot that should be good enough to win your game. The ammo in Shifty is very bad, but what is really good about this spot is all the mountains around it. If you get first zone, you will always easily be able to be the first to claim an amazing hill. With a little bit of luck, just this alone can win you games. Shifty is unique in that way, because the mountains around Shifty are insanely overpowered. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is it for today's video. I really hope you all enjoyed. If you have any questions regarding anything, leave them in the comments below. And with that said, please go on to have an amazing day. My name is MaryTM. Stay safe and take care.